So, welcome to our third Collect on the Couch podcast. I'm sitting here with Chow from Jude's Ice Cream. So firstly, Chow, can you tell us a bit about Jude's Ice Cream, your role and where it started?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. So Jude started in 2002. My dad, he'd previously actually worked in the city, and he said he'd always wanted to do something with his own hands, and he loves food. We have these barns at home that weren't being used, and so he thought about what could I use these barns for, and in his own words, he would say this, he's always said, ice cream seemed the most sexy thing to do. So he decided to go into ice cream, and literally it started just my dad in the barn making it with his own hands, and I think he just wanted to make a really, really great English ice cream with milk from the local cows. And the first batch on the 19th of December 2002, he walked across to the pub in our village, and that was the start of Jude's. And I think he always felt like if you go to the ice cream fixture in the supermarkets, it's fairly dominated by a few multinational companies. And he thought, there's clearly a space for a great British ice cream. And so from the very start, we had that thought. And then my brother joined. That was interesting because he turned up at the door and said, "Dad, looks like you're having more fun than I am. I'm coming to join." And my dad wrote him a long letter saying, "These are all the reasons why you shouldn't join Jude's. Think of your career, go and learn a skill, then you could come into the business later." But my brother said, "No, I'm going to do it." And so he joined up, and he started really taking Jude's out to some really high-profile chefs and restaurants. And we got, the product had developed by that time into a great product, and it got great pickup. And so our core business for about 10 years was really top-end chefs and restaurants. And then about 2 years later, I joined up, and I came along, said, "This looks like fun." And I said, "I'm joining." And my brother said, no, you shouldn't. And he wrote me a long email. We were onto email by that point of view, saying, "Chow, these are the reasons why you shouldn't join. Think of your career, go and learn a skill." But I joined anyway. And so, we kept on growing mostly the restaurants and pubs. And then in about 2010, we rebranded our tubs. We wanted something based on the classic sort of stripy milk jug. So all Jude's tubs now are these sort of classic stripes. And we wanted something that looked classic, but then also modern. And with these rebranded tubs, we started to sell into retail. So that's both the take-home tubs that are 500 mils and the 120 mil tubs, which are in lots of great theatres and cinemas and just sports venues around the UK. So gradually that has become more of our business. And our vision and our dream is that there's a space in the ice cream freezer for a really great British ice cream that's making the most delicious ice cream. Because at the moment it's all the multinationals who are there.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're going for. And I'll talk you through some of our innovation in a bit, but that's our focus, to make the most delicious English ice cream and to make it available nationally. Now we're in Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Ocado, so make it available nationally to British consumers.
Yeah, that's great. And it feels you sort of get that feeling when I think with the branding and everything, it feels really authentic and really sort of homely, kind of family based.
Hopefully it's always been very much our kind of creative approach to create something that we love. And that's both the packaging design, but also the flavours. We have people come to us all the time with really interesting, but sometimes very wacky flavour suggestions, and we filter those by saying what would we love to eat, and so that's how we design our products.
Now, obviously, I know it's a kind of family business. How is it? How do you find it working with family? Is there ever any arguments, or is it all kind of okay?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it's been a real journey for us. So, in the early days, it was just my dad, my mum, my brother, myself, and maybe three other people who are helping in the dairy with production. The team's obviously grown a lot now, but I think what's been amazing for us is that working in a business as a family, we've had to learn to resolve conflict. Um, and I think before, probably as a family, you can all go home, meet up, myself, my brothers, my sisters, my parents, and you might have a weekend, and there might be a bit of friction if you have an argument about, we all have arguments about various stuff, and then you just kind of leave. But what we've had to learn to do is basically, when we've had arguments, we have to just sit down and talk them through until they're resolved. And that's been, I think, absolutely brilliant for us, because it's meant that we face up to issues that come up and we deal with them and then we move on. So from that point of view, it's been brilliant, I think, for our family.
Yeah.
And we have learnt to be disciplined. So, like at Christmas, when we all get home, there is an agreement that we don't talk about ice cream at all, because then, we have to be disciplined. That's just time to be family and do family things together.
Kind of separate it quite well then, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And we've learnt that too, because in the early days, those boundaries were all a bit blurred, and yeah, it wasn't great. So now we've got strict boundaries, and also we work hard at talking stuff through. Which means in the short term, you can have some very awkward conversations with, I could with and still do with my parents or my brother. But in the long term, it means we know that we'll get things sorted.
Yeah, I can imagine that being kind of something you have to work through, make things when you work.
Yeah, and it takes practice. But I think now we're just into the habit of sorting through problems, which is great and really healthy, I think.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And could you talk a little bit about the actual making process, how you make the ice cream?
Yeah, sure. So I'll actually go back to the designing process. So that starts usually with my brother, actually, who's in touch with all sorts of restaurateurs, chefs coming to us. So I look after our MPD team, saying we're seeing these amazing new flavour combinations in the market. Let's try this or that. And then we go through a number of trials. I mean, some flavours we get to sort of version B or version A23 or something, or B23. It goes round and round and round, just refining it. And I think the best example for us of what we're trying to do is salted caramel. So we, in 2009 or 10, my brother came back from France and he said, salted caramel is it's an amazing flavour. It's big in France. I'm sure it's about to take off here. We've got to make it. And my dad and we turned to him and he said, salt's a swear word. It was back then in sort of food circles in 2010. And we said, we're not going to make anything called salted anything other than salted caramel. But we tried it and it tasted amazing. And so we made it and we put it out there. And, for us, it's a real point of pride that we had our salted caramel out in the market 4 years ahead of the multinationals. And now, most ice cream manufacturers will make it. So from a design point of view, we see our point of difference as seeing interesting new flavour combinations and bringing them to market early. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the design. So I've got our gin and tonic ice cream in front of us. Here we thought gin and tonic is really interesting. It's a classic English flavour. We collaborated with Sipsmith, who we just think are an amazing English brand. It's got the really nice bright stripes, and normally people would put gin and tonic probably into a sorbet, but we thought actually ice cream's way more fun, So that's one that we created. I think it's time to try some.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's crack it open.
To have a taste of that. And the key here is using amazing ingredients. And we use Sipsmith because the flavour, you can't put too much alcohol in because the ice cream will then go too soft.
Yeah.
But the Sipsmith, the flavour of the botanicals comes through.
That's really nice. That's really good, that flavour.
And we didn't want it to just be a novelty flavour, so it doesn't taste overpowering. It tastes like a tub where you could, eat the whole tub. We're talking about a small 120ml tub here, and it's a delicate flavour. So that was something we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then this year, we've collaborated with Lefroy on hot toddy ice cream.
Right.
And again, we wanted to do something fun, unique in the market. Lefroy, again, you can't put too much alcohol in because it gets too soft. So you need to choose ingredients that are really strong, powerful flavours. And Lefroy, for whiskey drinkers, is really peaty, really smoky. The flavour is so powerful and punchy. Let's crack this one open. And so that's why we use this. And this is amazing with sort of mince pies, anything that you're baking at home. And again, you don't get too much of the alcohol hit because you can't put too much alcohol in, but you get loads of smoky peatiness.
Yeah, you can definitely taste that in that one. I think probably more so than this one.
Yeah. And
cool.
Then, sorry, I got sidetracked a bit. So the manufacturing process. So at home, we go and pick up. Steve goes and picks up the milk from the cows every morning, and we drive it to our dairy. So we're based just outside Winchester in a place called Twyford.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I said, it's all about sourcing the best ingredients. So we source the best ingredients, local, fresh milk, and it's a little bit like cooking ice cream at home. You'll put it into a huge pan. I mean, for us, it's a huge pan. At home, it would be a small pan. You heat it up, so that's the pasteurizing process. And so we make it in small batches, and the advantage of that is that we pasteurize it for longer. That both has a functional it's both functional in that it kills the germs, but also it allows all the flavours to infuse. It cooks. It's what's called a classic crème anglaise base, so a bit like a custard, and so it gets heated up, all those flavours infuse, and then it gets cooled down and left overnight, and that means that all the ice cream basically can settle. So egg yolk in the ice cream is a natural emulsifier. It all settles, so you get a really creamy and smooth base mix. And then when you get to the freezing process, freezing is all about freezing as fast as possible, because the faster you freeze, the smaller the ice crystals, which means the smoother the ice cream.
Yeah.
So once we get it into the freezers, it just has to get frozen down as fast as possible, and then at that point we might also add some inclusions. That might be some strawberry pieces or some chocolate pieces, and then it gets filled into the tubs and then into the blast freezers to be cooled again even further as fast as possible.
Yeah,
and that is that's how you make ice cream.
That's great. I might have to give it a go myself now, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's actually really easy to do at home. You can do it at home. We've got a recipe on our website. You can go and try it at home. I did it with my how old is he? He's about a 2-year-old nephew, and he loved it. So if he can do it, I've got confidence in you.
Maybe I'll have to give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah.
Now I know you give 10% of your profits to charity. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, sure. And I think for us, it's not just about the 10%. It's more about how does our business act in the community, because we feel that all businesses should be giving back to their communities. So to talk about the 10% first, so we've decided I guess myself, my brother James, who runs our production, we are at the stage where sort of kids are happening, let's say, and so we want to support kids charities and charities that work with young people. So the 10%. This year, our main charity has been called Spear. It's actually based in Hammersmith in London, and they work with underprivileged young adults, and they put them through this incredible training program to help them basically get into work and build self-esteem. And we've been involved with them, helping them out to, it's incredible seeing the transformation in these young people, and they go from being at home basically doing nothing to this incredible course where they build self-esteem, they learn presentation skills, they learn really basic people skills that will serve them well in the workplace, and then they have to give a presentation at the end, after which they graduate, and then Spear helps them get into work. So that's something we've done. We've also worked with a local hospice to us in Hampshire called Naomi House, who do amazing work with seriously sick young children. So that's kind of the 10% and where we give that. But then our community involvement, what we also love to do is work with local schools. So we run these really fun projects where we'll go in and we'll say, this is how ice cream's made, this is the process, this is where the milk comes from, all the really basic stuff. And then they get into teams and have to develop their own ice cream brand and their own ice cream flavour. And then the winner will make that for them, and then they will sell it at the school gate and then give the profits from that to charities. So that's something that's really fun and really engaging for local kids, and a way that we feel we can serve the local schools around us.
Have you had any exciting flavours come out of that?
Yeah, it's quite funny. The winner, well, it's always just got a million sweets chucked into it. So a little bit of ice cream with all sorts of sweets thrown in, but the kids love it, and they learn a lot about how their food's made, about business, and it's great for all sorts of skills, their creative skills, their math skills. So the headline, and on every one of our tubs, it says 10% of profits go to charity, but for us that's really just kind of hopefully the tip of the iceberg in terms of how we want to act as a business and how we want to interact with our community.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, yeah, thank you very much for joining us on the Khoollect Couch. If anyone has any additional questions, please comment under the feature article, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Great, thank you.
Thanks, bye.